Today's webinar is going to be a LearnPad webinar, and we are going to focus on a result from the LearnPad, which is the modeling environment for the process-based social learning. Before we go further with the webinar, just shortly about my person. My name is Neşat Efendioğlu. I am working as Senior Project Manager and Scientific Consultant at BOC Group. I contributed to LearnPad as work package leader, and I was responsible for development of LearnPad modeling environment. And couple of technical notes: all your microphones are muted during the webinar. If you have questions, please type your questions into chat window, as you see in the red rectangle. We are going to collect all your questions, and we are going to answer all your questions at the end of the webinar. Shortly about the webinar agenda. At the beginning, we are going to discuss shortly main concept, or with other words, main idea behind the LearnPad concept. Then we are going to introduce targeted scenarios by LearnPad, and then solutions what the LearnPad offers for those scenarios. Then we will come back, actually our focus of today's webinar, which is the LearnPad modeling environment, and we will demonstrate how to create the learning content, how to deploy learning content on a collaborative working environment. And as I said, at the end of the webinar, we are going to answer your questions. We believe that main knowledge of organizations lay on their processes. If you can externalize and formalize this knowledge, you can easily share it, train actors on it, monitor organization and individuals, which at the end will give you opportunities to evaluate and improve your organization as well as individuals. But it is alone not enough to describe tasks and the sequences in a process, but you have to first of all describe involved organizational hierarchy, roles, concrete performance. You need to describe or identify use documents or the other knowledge resources in this process. You have to make clear what kind of competencies do you need for a given process, and what kind of competencies do you have in your organization. At the other hand, as each organization your organization also have some business motivations, goals, and based on that, you have to identify, or you have to build measurement framework which measures if you achieved or arrived these business goals or business motivations. This is basically the fundamentals of the LearnPad concept. What kind of scenarios did we target in the LearnPad? First of all, the individual training. We said let the people step through the externalized and formalized processes, learn how to execute it, explore the knowledge resources they have to study for their roles. Second is the organizational evaluation. We said to let the people discuss and work on this externalized knowledge, let them give feedback and improve this externalized knowledge collaboratively. So you can start to organizational evolution. The third one, we said through the monitoring abilities you can support decision making, and you can reflect the organizational and individual performance, and again through the reflection you can optimize and improve your organization, or let's say the main core knowledge, your business processes. Last but not least, making these processes or your knowledge external, you make your processes transparent to the citizens. So you give the citizens a chance to analyze them, to see what kind of processes you are offering to them, and to give them a chance to give you the feedback and co-create the public administration processes. Those were the scenarios which are targeted by the LearnPad, and what kind of solutions do we offer for these scenarios? First of all, LearnPad modeling environment, which is the core of the solution, where you create the learning content and the measurement framework. The second one is the collaborative working space, where we deploy learning content for individual training, organizational evolution, and citizen transparency. Third one is the verification component. Before you deploy the learning content, to verify the learning content quantitatively and qualitatively. The fourth one is the simulation environment, where the learner can test themselves before they execute the processes, the real processes in the real settings. And the fifth one is the dashboard for the individuals and the organizations to monitor themselves. At the very back end, we had a transformation component and the recommender engine. Transformation component was responsible for transforming the knowledge among those 5 components, and the recommender engine to recommend the additional knowledge resources to the learner. Today, as I said at the beginning, we will focus on creating learning content on the modeling environment, and then we will see how the modeling environment deploys the modeling content on collaborative working space. It was the short introduction of the concept and the introduction of the webinar. Now we are going to start with the live demo. As I promised, I am going to present you first of all the modeling environment, LearnPad modeling environment, where we created the learning content and measurement framework. As you remember, I discussed about some aspects like for the externalization of the knowledge to support the scenarios that I mentioned before. You need to care about the aspects like the processes and the cases, organization, competencies in the organization, or the competencies that you need for the processes or the cases, document the knowledge resources or the products for the whole process, your business motivations, and your KPIs to measure your performance as an organization or as individuals. As you can see, for each aspects, we are targeting each aspect with different model types. Today, we are not gonna create from the beginning, from the scratch course, let's say the learning content, but I am gonna present you a real case, which is actually implemented for the Regionale Marche, which is the state in Italy. A real case which called the SWAP. Basically, SWAP process is defined by the Italian law. It is describing how the municipalities can permit entrepreneurs to set up their new businesses or set up their business activities. As you can imagine, this process is cross-organizational process, which means it includes several organizations and for sure several roles and several performers. Let's start with that. At the moment we have just one course, one learning content for this SWAP process, and also for the specific case of the SWAP process, which is the Tutela Unico, one of the most complex process of the SWAP. This model set or the learning content includes, as I said, first of all the main process and 2 different sub-processes. As you can see from here, it includes also the different organizational structure. Different organizational structure from the organizations which are involved in this process. And for sure the documented knowledge resources which are used in this process and competencies, what they need for this process, and the competencies do they have in those three organizations: business motivations and their goals, and their measurement framework. Let's go through the details. Let's start with the business process. We go into the business process. For sure, I'm not going to explain you all the details about the process, but as you can see, we described the business process with the BPMN. I hope you are familiar with this notation, which is suggested by the OMG. As you can see, we described the sequences with this BPMN, and it includes several tasks and the sequences and also some sub-processes. Let's go in one sub-processes. We jump into one sub-processes, and it defines also some tasks and the sequences. For instance, you see one task here, and this task needs one document resource, and it's called per law the instance. It describes what is this instance actually, what kind of document knowledge resource is that in the modeling environment, and for sure we have also the concrete document or the knowledge resources. Let's jump into it. We jump into the concrete document. In this document you see that the more details about this document. Since this document is confidential, I cannot show you the link of this document, but you can imagine here you can attach the concrete document, or you can give the URI of this document, which is included or persisted in a knowledge repository. Shortly about this document model, document and knowledge resource model. As you can see, several documents are included in this document. The documents as a learning content, reference documents which are describing the relevant laws, and as you can see, some required competencies by the roles and the acquired competencies by the role. We are going to see that why it is like that, but shortly we are documenting also what kind of knowledges do we have in the organizations, and what kind of knowledges or the competencies do we need in the processes. Let's go back to the process. As you can see, the swap office as a role is responsible for this process. Let's go inside. You see that swap office in the Monte Azuri monopolicity is responsible for this process, and they need the role swap officer. Let's jump into this swap officer. You see we have the swap officer as a role, and we have three concrete performers who are playing in this role. And for sure this role needs some competencies to fulfill this role. And it is documented again in this document model as a required competencies for the role. Let's go inside this document. You will see the competency profile here. These competencies are the atomic competencies which are defined by the AQF, which is the European qualification framework. It defines what does the qualification means, and defines the qualification layers. And for those role, we have documented three different competencies from the AQF and the required competency levels. And those competencies also persisted in another model. I jump into this model, and these are the competencies which are needed in this process in the Marhe region. And in details about the competencies also persisted in this competency modeling object. You can see this describes the competency according to the AQF. Okay, basically these were the main process organizations which are involved in this main process. Documents and the knowledge resources which are needed for this process and the competencies. And we mentioned that you need to, as each organizations, you have a business motivations and the goals, and you have the measurement framework to measure if you achieve or fulfill this motivation or the goals. First of all, this is the measurement framework, a KPI model, which is based on the balanced scorecard. It defines also the strategic goals and the learning goals. For example, here we have a strategic goal, and this strategic goal is measured with different KPIs and quantified by a learning goal. And this strategic goal, again, related to a business motivation, which is defined on a holistic level. It says, for example, this goal is strategic goal in the KPI model is defined for the goal high client satisfaction, and which supports actually the vision of the holistic vision of the being the best public administration, which is offering the best SOAP in the Italy. Okay, it was basically the learning content and the measurement framework. Let's go back to the our course or the model set, which includes all those information as a model content. And for sure, to make this content accessible to the individuals which are not familiar with certain formalizations, you need to deploy them in certain forms. How do we do that? Basically, as I click on this model, a process is going to start, and a couple of engines are going to start, and the deployment process is going to start. It is going to take a long time. I am going to click that, and I am going to show you shortly what is the scenario behind. It is going to take like a couple of minutes. Meanwhile, I am going to present you what is happening at the behind. At the behind, modeling editor, the modeling environment of the LearnPad, getting the all required models from the model repository. It sees what kind of relations and dependencies do they have, selects all the models from the repository, and put them in form as XML file, takes the images of all the models, required models, their image maps, HTML image maps, and it creates for the processes BPMN data interchange format files. And these files are bundled and sent to the LearnPad core platform. Meanwhile, modeling environment communicates with the verification component. It says that, okay, I am sending a new model set to the LearnPad core platform. This is the model ID, check it. And then verification component goes to the LearnPad core platform, starts the verification process. Verification process from the quantitative point of view and the qualitative point of view. And then there is a decision. Verification component says, is all the model set verified quantitatively and qualitatively? If it is no, verification component sends back to the modeling environment as XML file required correction actions. And as the modeling environment receives these correction actions as XML, it interprets these correction actions, transforms these correction actions in its context, and offers some correction actions to the modeler. If the modeling content verified, then the verification component gives OK to the transformation component, and transformation components start to create the wiki pages based on these models with their dependencies, and they create these nice front end for the end users. I hope the process is finished. Yes, it is finished. Let's check the verification status. It's going to take a little bit of time. Nice, all the models are correct. I am happy to hear about that. Now let's go to the collaborative working space. I deployed this working space locally for the sake of performance. I have here the shortcut, and I landed on it. If I go a little bit down, I see the courses here, and I see my pushed courses in the collaborative working space. And I can start the course immediately. I start the course, and I say, I want to learn from the scratch, from the beginning, the tutorial Unicode process. I started again this process, and now, as you have to imagine that I am the newcomer of the public administration. I started the job recently, and I need to learn how to execute the tutorial Unicode process. And I want to just learn what is this process, and I can browse this process. Let's start this process. And it says me the first starting point is that, and as soon as I get the application from entrepreneur, documentation process is starting. And the next step is to assess the application. And I go through like that, I step through the process and see what kind of documents do I need in this process for each task, and which organizations are involved in each tasks. So in case I know that I need to know this document, I need to read these documents, if I click in it, I will see and I will read the description of this document, and I will see all the organizational units, and if I go in the organizational unit, I will find all the details about this organizational unit. Let's go just a step through as a sample on these documents. As you see here, there is a decision. You can go through that. Also, you can click like that on the process, and you can jump into the processes and so on. Let's jump to at the end of the process, and I see that there is also the XOR decision. But as learner, I see there is a ambiguous name for this exclusive gateway, and I don't know what is the exclusive gateway. In that case, I can log in the platform, and I can give feedback about it. And I can say, okay, this name should be corrected. And in that case, I mean, just imagine many users are browsing this process, stepping through this process, and they are giving the feedbacks about this process. And this is another extension of the knowledge, which should be communicated back to the model designer, to the learning content designer, which means feedback to the modeling environment. In that case, if the modeler, for example, logs in again to the modeling environment, and after a couple of times wants to check about the feedbacks, the modeler can click on the retrieve feedback and see what kind of feedbacks do we receive about the learning content, about the models. As you recognize, there is feedback about this one. You see at the moment 2, because I made a test before we started the webinar. I received from the collaborative working space a feedback saying that, okay, this name should be corrected. And in that case, with collecting all the feedbacks, I can make the required improvements on the process or the whole learning content itself. Basically, it was all the live demo. Now we can start with taking your questions. Let me give the couple of minutes to check if there is any questions. I can wait a couple of minutes to send us the questions. Please write your questions, as we said at the beginning, to the chat. Let me show you again. Please write your questions to the chat. We are waiting a couple of minutes, and then if there is no questions, we will end the webinar. Okay, it seems that there is no questions. Just let me give you some communication possibilities. If you have some questions, or if you have some doubts, or you want to contact with us, either you can communicate with me directly with my email address, working email address, or you can send us a request through the info@ADOxx.org. Or also we encourage you to join our LinkedIn group and follow us from the Twitter. Thank you very much.